That sounds good to Mahogany.
Going with Serenity?
Yeah, he's pretty sure that he doesn't have a jealous god.
Kelian, who do you rob?
Kelian's not robbing anybody. He's gonna chill in for a little while longer.
Okay.
Who are you murdering? Who are you selling?
You're gonna hang out in the tavern. Kelian, I want you to make me 3 perception checks. Note the results, but don't give them to me just yet.
And as we're heading up the road, I'm going to keep an eye out for anyone who looks to me like a Ciclon trader when dressed, faces on the buckles, all that.
Once you pass through Traveler's Gate and exit the Merchant's Tier, you don't see any other...
bloody hell.
You don't really see any other outsiders.
Okay.
I'll tell Serenity I saw a trader the other day.
I was just thinking if we had someone who was interesting back to Sigil, I could exchange them for some silver, but not too worried about it.
Silver. Don't worry.
Yeah, most of the outsiders you're going to meet up in the north area of town, up on the 2nd and 3rd terraces, would be pilgrims who are heading out of town, and they already know not to bring gold into Mount Celestia. Alright, so let's go first to the Temple of Amaterasu. I made a point to only give a description of one temple and one priest in this town, and it was this one, because I knew.
Yeah.
Arriving at the temple, and it's very small. This is not a temple built for prayer and ritual. It's a temple built to provision Amaterasu's pilgrims on their journeys up the mountain. It's tended to by a high priest named Saito, and I have his NPC stats here. He is unfathomably old. He's a human, but he's easily older than any human you've ever met. He has a bald head, and he has straight, long, white mustache coming off of his lip that is whiter than any hair you've ever seen on a human face. And he tends this temple with some number of young handmaidens of the goddess. And the two of you are welcomed into the temple.
I'll
Right, looks and says, "Nice place."
And it is a very nice place. Quaint, but nice.
I'll nod, and then Ciclon looks kind of guilty on it, and then it says, "I'd like to make a confession."
Right, looks at Ciclon and said, "Do I need to cover my ears for this?"
Well, imagine there'd be a private place for that.
There isn't. It's a one-room temple. There's nowhere else to go.
Okay. Then.
There's not even bedchambers or anything in here for the handmaidens. He says, "The light of Amaterasu gives no place for untruths to hide, my child." He says, "Speak, and you will be heard. Speak, and you will be forgiven. Let the light of the goddess burn away your guilt."
I feel that some actions some situations I was placed into recently forced me to act in a way that I don't feel comfortable with, that I don't think we would like. So and I'll explain what went down in Sigil, that even though Serenity was lawfully detained by the Harmonium, he still aided in her escape.
And he
and
says,
Riot almost says something, but shuts up.
Riot looks like she's about to say something but doesn't.
Yeah.
Okay. And the old priest, as Ciclon talks, he puts his hand on your shoulder and listens very intently to your words. And at the end, he says, "It sounds as though you have gone to great lengths for the aid of someone you love dearly."
I don't know if I love her, but I mean, she's a good friend.
Sometimes acting against one's conscience for the benefit of your friends of your comrades in arms, of your family. The light of Matarasu shines brightly on these actions. And he says, know that she is happy with you.
Believe it or not, that actually makes Ciclon feel a hell of a lot better. He actually does feel a lot better after hearing this.
And he
Right,
turns
Puff
to...
says, I was happy with you too.
The old
Ciclon
priest...
pretends not to hear that.
The old priest turns to Riot and says, you, my daughter of darkness, what have you to confess?
And Riot says, And Riot says, how long do you got?
How does she say that? Is she being sarcastic or is she being sincere?
Sarcastic. Just
Sarcastic? And he laughs. Not at you, just chuckles a little bit. And he pats you warmly on the shoulder and says, walk 10 miles with your friend, then we may speak.
Yeah, and Riot strikes and says, listen, I may not care for much law, but it's not like I'm a bad person for that, right? People understand that, right? I don't regret anything I've done.
And he says, sometimes those of us who are incapable of allowing in the warmth of the light of the goddess, it is not because we are bad or evil, perhaps misguided. But your friend walks a straight and narrow path with his head held high, and there is much wisdom to be gained from him. If you follow him, he will not steer you wrongly.
Well, I've got to follow him here.
Cock a brow and is like, really? He thinks that I'm the best person to be following around? Okay.
And at this, Saito leaves the two of you in the charge of a couple of the handmaidens, and they see to any hospitality that they can provide to you. Very mild hospitality, because this is not a very rich temple.
Mm-hmm. No, that's fine.
Okay.
And Elsie's business concluded. I mean, he would present something as an offering, but he doesn't have anything to give. He doesn't have coin. He doesn't have 2 coins to rub together.
Very notably, nothing was asked for, which strikes you as much different from Sigil, where you can't take 2 steps into a temple without being shaken down for money.
Yeah, no kidding.
But they don't have much here. They offer you bread and water, a comfortable place to sit and meditate for a time. But what they do have, they offer freely.
Riot will ask if they have any hymns. I want to hear one of their hymns.
And some of the handmaidens sing you a very pretty hymn, presumably in Japanese. Mahogany and Serenity are going to the Temple of Yondala, and here's the problem. It's very uncomfortable for you two, because it is a hobbit hole. The temple is very clearly built for halflings. So you can enter, but you have to stoop down. Once you get inside, you no longer have to stoop under the ceiling, but all the chairs are too small to sit in. The portions of food being offered, however, are not small in the slightest, because, again, halflings.
I'll just point out that Serenity is 6'10".
I'll transform into an adorable kitten.
Okay, so Serenity and her cat wander into the Temple of Yondala. And Yondala is the greatest of the halfling pantheon. She is the head of the halfling family. Her purviews are protection. And for inasmuch as the halflings have a god of war, it would be Yondala. But going into this temple, you don't see anything of war. Once you get in and you find a little nook to make yourself cozy in, they bring out fresh fruits, No, fuck it. I was right the first time. They're serving foots. That's what you guys have. Enjoy the halfling foots. That's what you're getting.
Oh, they're delicious.
Is it beefy foods?
Fruit by the foot.
They, without even being prodded, they tell you straight off they don't have any cloaks, hats, windscreens, walking canes, anything like that that would befit a woman of your stature, but they can direct you to a place where you can find them if you need them.
No, I was just looking for a place to get a good meal.
And
I'll ask if they're willing to take a donation in exchange.
sure, what do you offer as donation? Gold?
A couple gold coins, sure.
Make a persuasion check.
Okay. No.
No? And
I have none of it.
firmly but friendly, your donation of gold is denied. But they are more than happy to provide you with some good food and some drink. The hearth is very warm in here.
Mahogany is willing to let them pet him in exchange.
And there are some halfling children, young acolytes, who are exceedingly happy to do exactly that.
Mahogany paid his way.
And none of the children are rough or angry with the cat, as young children are wont to be. They treat animals a little too harshly. They are very, very comforting and very easy as they pet and dote on the Mahogany cat.
I prefer the cat Mahogany.
The cat Mahogany. Serenity being by far the biggest spectacle in this place. After a few moments, you are surrounded by halfling pilgrims, 8 or 9 of them, asking all manner of questions about where you're from, what brings you to the mount, why you've come to the temple of Yondala.
She's not actually all that unused to this, given that she was raised by gnomes.
So, do you tell them about your upbringing in Bytopia?
Yeah, I'll tell them about my home in Bytopia. I'll tell them where I'm from, and that I have a mission to climb the mountain. I don't want to say much more about it, but that it's dangerous, and well, I realize that especially the people of Yondala are no cowards. I wouldn't want to be involved in it. I just thought that it would seem like a nice place to have a meal.
And when you explain your upbringing in Bytopia, they all immediately understand why you would come here to this temple, being from where you're from. Many of them are from Bytopia as well. And so you have a lovely meal at the Temple of Yondala. Mr. Kelian, I asked you to make 3 checks. What'd you get?
You sure did. I got a 25, 19, and a 7.
And a 7.
Yeah. Yeah.
You spend a couple of hours in the tavern. You have to reject the offer of free drink another 4 or 5 times before the barmaids finally get the hint and kind of leave you be.
I imagine it's a few extra times since I'm sulking.
You really look, you get a drink. Are you sure? How about some food? We have some. we have fruit flavored jam. Have some.
The hell is food anyway?
You reposition yourself. After being in the bar for about an hour, you manage to move yourself over to another corner as patrons are leaving, and you move yourself to a more advantageous position to see through the door that they're exiting. And eventually you see they're going through a door about 10 feet inside the room, hidden from your view from the front door of the tavern. A very tight spiral staircase leading down. And you see that they're descending this staircase whenever they're retrieving fresh drinks.
Oh, how much trouble does Kelian want to get in?
After another hour or so, you notice the door that could be closed. You haven't seen it closed yet, but it could be closed between this room and the back room has no lock whatsoever. Nor does the front door to the tavern.
Door to the tavern.
No locks anywhere on the premises. And your last perception check was a 7, so you can take that and shove up your food.
Okay.
How many feet to the food?
Fruit by the foot. God damn it.
Yeah. Why not? It's I'm gonna wait till both of, because you said there's two women making the rounds, right?
Yeah, there's 2 barmaids with blonde hair. One
Two
of them
barmaids.
wears her hair in a tight braid, and one of them has very short cut hair.
I'm gonna wait until I see both of them are out, and I will try to make my way inside and up the stairs.
You mean
I guess
down the stairs?
However, yeah, down the stairs.
This will be impossible to do unseen.
Really?
Yeah, there's your very tiny room, and you're in full view of everybody in the room, so impossible to do unseen.
How much trouble do I want to get it on Mount Celestia? Kelian will... Alright, instead, different line of attack. Kelian will try to chat up one of the barmaids as much as possible, with the goal of trying to discern as much information about this wine as humanly possible.
Okay? She says that Araquiel could tell you the story much better than she can, and she kind of blushes as she says this. And then she says he's downstairs if you'd want to go chat.
He's downstairs?
And she indicates to the open door that you've been staking out for the past 2 hours.
Yeah, alright. Let's totally do that.
Okay. You squeeze into this back room, and you have to squeeze down this spiral staircase, and you get to this underground room that's very hot. Supernaturally hot. Much hotter than you imagine it should be. The room downstairs is actually larger than the room, upstairs. One wall is lined with various kegs with taps in them. Rows and rows of used glasses and platters. At the far end of the room, kind of almost as an afterthought, is a really tiny writing desk. Comically so, because the being hunched over, feverishly working papers at the desk is a Warden Archon, which means he's a bear man. Which means this bear is sitting at a desk in a squashed corner about 2 sizes too small for him, trying to work the quill with his big bear paws. He looks like a bit part out of a Disney movie. Like Baloo plays accountant is what we're talking here.
Right.
The kegs all have markings on them in Celestial. Various types of beers and imports from the dwarven layers of Mount Celestia. Very little in the way of wine except for the one marked Giru's Finest. That is the only wine they sell. And when he sees you coming down the stairs, he looks up and he's wearing on his face these tiny, tiny spectacles that don't even cover his eyes, little beady eyes. And he puts down what he's working on and he welcomes you in. He says, "Come in, friend. Long time no see."
Long time no see. Kelian extends and I hand a shake, but it's be shaking a paw, I guess.
And
so
he shakes with his bare paw as best he can.
All right.
Takes 6 slashing damage.
That's more than that.
He introduces himself. Arakwheel Downwalker. Who do I have the honor to speak to today?
They call me Kelian.
Then I shall do so. He says, have a glass of wine. And he begins tapping the nearby keg of Giru's finest.
I've already had one. I know all about it. It says with a hint of exasperation in his voice.
It's very good. I'll drink. You talk. And he motions to not even a chair, just not even a stool, just a large bucket that's upturned, sitting in front of the desk. And he begins to drink his wine.
So, you get it. Kelian says as bluntly as possible.
You say you get it?
The wine.
He nods. Fermentation process happens here.
Here.
And again, he nods.
And the Lucky Lion.
Again, he nods very proudly.
Excuse me, I find that a little hard to believe.
He asks you to walk all the way to the back wall of the room.
Kelian obliges. Gonna get the close to the back of the room.
And you walk along the kegs of the wall about 10 feet until he barks out, "Stop! No further."
Kelian stops.
Hold your arm about shoulder's length.
Kelian complies.
Hold your palm flat and push it forward. Slowly. Don't push past the point of discomfort.
Yeah, no, Kelian follows instructions.
And as you're doing so, your hand is reaching the source of the heat in the room, although it doesn't look like there's anything in front of you. And if you get to a point where you feel like you're holding your hand several inches above a hot stove, this empty space in the air is giving off intense heat. And he says, I don't much like trucking with the illusions, and the plane usually forbids it, but with the grace of Giru, the Lord of Fire, I keep my secret shielded from prying eyes. You can't see it, but it's there.
Kelian turns and looks at Arakwheel and says, and yet you're so open and forthcoming with me about it.
Well, you, of course, being the trustworthy sort, he laughs kindly.
Oh, well. Kelian dodges everything about that statement. Instead looks at the wall again.
And you're standing about 15 feet from the back wall of the place. And there is this intense invisible heat source right in front of you. He asks if you've heard the story.
No. I haven't. Please tell.
He tells you about the glory of his god, Giru, the Lord of Fire. A vengeful god who is rich in the way of warfare. And for much of his term as a Warden Archon, Arakwheel fought in Giru's armies, engaging in the... He did 2 tours in the Blood War, fighting the hated Tanari. And his last conquest was... Notes, please. Oh, it's because they're not on that page. Hold on, I have to open a different page of notes. I have so many pages of notes, you guys.
I empathize.
He describes a volcano far out in the Outlands, close enough into the center where much of the Archon's magic is suppressed. The further you travel into the center of the Outlands, the more and more the anti-magic effects of that plane takes hold, to the point where the center, no supernatural powers whatsoever work. This volcano is situated far enough in that the Archons were at a severe disadvantage, but they had heard of a flock of red dragons who had taken this volcano as a nest, terrorizing the surrounding lands. And Giru, the Lord of Fire, decided that he would be the one to oust this menace. So the Archons, including Araquiel, went out to the volcano, killed a great many red dragons, and took the rest alive, those that surrendered, clipped their wings so they could not fly, marched them back to Mount Celestia, and took them to Giru's realm, where they were put in comfortable but very secure prisons. Araquiel was then offered retirement from his time in the army as the key holder of these red dragons, one of which over hundreds of years he developed a friendship with, a red dragon named Viendro. Viendro was young and spiteful when she was taken, but over time began to accept the worship of Giru. And reaching the end of her life, having spent her entire hundreds long year life imprisoned, asked Araquiel for the great favor of appealing to Giru for a pardon so that she may travel to the realm of Bahamut, the Platinum Dragon, to live out the rest of her days and die there. And Giru granted this request, provided that she allowed the organ of her body that produces fire to be cut out. And she accepted this, and Araquiel cut this part of her out of her throat, so she was no longer able to breathe fire or speak. And then Giru traveled with her and left her in a place in the realm of Bahamut. In return for this great favor, Viendro taught Araquiel how to make this vintage of wine. Before she took up nest in the volcano, she and some of her family had sired a race of dragonborn that lived on Arborea, who after 100 of years became a race of sorcerers, who after another 100 of years became regular mortals. And these mortals, this household, came under the purview of Lady Lesglin, the one who approached you.
Mm-hmm.
And so you put two and two together. Araquiel didn't steal the vintage. He was given it by the one who invented it hundreds and hundreds of years after it was invented. And he decided that it would be a better way to spread the positive aspect of the Lord's fire by bringing this organ down the mountain and establishing a place where he can make this vintage and sell it.
So Kelian hears this whole story, and he almost doesn't believe it, except we're on Mount Celestia, so he knows it has to be true. And he's talking to an Archon. So...
Well, it's an Archon talking to a Tiefling, so there's nothing that isn't lawful about that.
Well, Kelian's an Aasimar. Yeah. Yeah, Aasimars are always lawful good, right?
Yeah.
But he relishes in telling this tale, and of he's very proud of his role in it.
Kelian waits a few moments for letting out another incredibly exasperated sigh and mutters underneath his breath, "I hate absolutely everything about this plane."
And Araquiel asks why.
Kelian turns around and spills the beans completely that Lesglin contacted him in need for his services to figure out what was going on, how you were able to get wine, how you're able to sell the wine here, and why the contract has ended.
What do you tell him about Lesglin? What you know about Lesglin is that she is an Eladrin, which means she is... Eladrin are essentially the Archons of Arborea. She would be the chaotic good version of Araquiel.
Kelian wouldn't say anything about that necessarily.
Okay. Well, he knew from Viendro that there was a noble house of mortals living in Arborea that had access to this vintage, what they thought was exclusive access. He's delighted to hear that they've made such a good profit on it for so many years, but he insists that there's much more good to be done in the multiverse by sharing this vintage with as many people as possible. Perhaps they could add their supply line to mine and know they have done a good and righteous thing.
I'm sure they would be glad to if we were to compensate them for it. Kelian says with fleeting hope.
He says, in response, he's more than happy to meet with your employer. But if she's looking to make any profit from him, she's going to leave disappointed. So my work is much more important than any profit that can be made off of this drink. Surely you agree?
He shakes his head in disagreement. For some, the profit is a thing.
He says, you said for some, the profit is the important thing?
Yeah, is the thing.
And he shakes his head and says he's very, very sad for those people. Would that they could learn from the wisdom of Viendro, the dragon, my friend, born out of greed, but who through the virtue of the Lord of Fire, her ignoble ways were scorched away, and she came through the other side with her head held high, and a purpose in the multiverse that outshines any amount of gold she could have amassed in her mountain. So how sick to his stomach is Kelian talking to this guy?
He's about to break. Like, he's just a snap and just let this have it. But he maintains his composure.
Okay. So what's next for Kelian?
Kelian sits down on the stool and he says, "You know what? I will totally have another glass of wine."
And he very cheerfully pours one for you.
No, he gulps it down like it was nothing.
Just throws it back.
Yeah.
What else is Kelian going to be doing here at the bar?
Nothing right now.
Okay. I'm going to take a quick 2 minutes and run to the bathroom and refresh my water. And when we come back, anybody who takes a third action in a row, they're going to start getting tired because you've spent the rough equivalent of a full day running around town, getting acclimated to the place. So I'll collect actions when I come back in 2 minutes.
Ciclon is more than happy to accompany you right wherever the hell you want in this town.
We'll get to that once Brick is back.
Okay, I was just throwing that out there. I didn't know what you had planned or. And yeah, no. Somebody in chat had just mentioned something about the Ferengi. So I started looking at Memory Alpha, the wiki for the rules of acquisition.
Mm-hmm.
And the 48th rule of acquisition is Kelian to a T. The bigger the smile, the sharper the knife.
Kelian was nothing but honest with that arcane.
I'm just saying in
What are you
general.
talking
I'm
about?
just saying in general. I'm just saying in general. I'm not like saying any one specific situation, but considering how many times he's charmed his way into somebody's pants and then stole or murdered them.
I don't think he's murdered anyone he slept with, except
I don't
for
think he's murdered any
demo.
pants.
And to be fair, you were all for taking that devil.
Yeah. No, I'm not. No, it's fine. He deserved it anyway.
Also, McDohl, the player, is enjoying very much the suffering of Kelian, so
Oh yeah, no,
it's all good.
No
I think-
doubt, man.
We're all on the same page regarding Kelian's suffering. I think the word would be delectable.
Yes, that is a good word.
Hanging out in the bar. All right, are you going to go back upstairs, or are you going to hang out down here with a rec wheel?
He's gonna hang out down here at the rec wheel.
Okay. After another hour or so, he apologizes a great deal, stands up, says he has to take his leave. Twice a day, he goes up to the Temple of Giru for meditation. But he says, please, make yourself at home. And watching him struggle up this narrow spiral staircase might be the funniest thing you've seen since you've got to Mount Celestia.
Or is to say to stop from laughing?
So, Riot, what is your next action?
Alright, still following Ciclon around.
Be right back. Got a peep.
What is Elsie Clone's next action?
You're still under the effect of that, aren't you?
Nope.
Oh. Oh, I was...
Right will say to Elzicon, listen, I was just given those Lammasu guff. I just wanted them to think I'm gonna cross your hole. But
Hey,
I'm not here to make your life worse, Ciclon.
Look,
You're not lawful good.
yeah. all I need to know is that you're not gonna twist my arm into anything ridiculous like that again.
No, I get it, and I feel bad about that. Honestly, I do.
All right. Well, anyway,
How honestly, on a scale of 1 to 10?
Like a 9.
It's more than I was expecting.
Yeah, I mean, Ciclone didn't want to do it, and Riot forced him to do it, which is pretty heavily against her beliefs.
Yeah.
Not her like belief, but like against her code.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, she's apologetic, and so she's willing to let Ciclone. This is Ciclone's day. He can do whatever he wants, and Riot will follow along.
This is where we get the really sweet piano riff part of the sitcom, isn't it?
the full house episode. Yeah.
So we get the minor key version on Riot's Day.
So what
And
about...
Riot says, but all that said, I'm kind of tired.
Okay, well that's fine. We can go, I guess, to that family who said they'd put us up.
So you're going to
Alright,
the
see you in the morning.
Gretchens.
Yes.
Riot's
Riot's not going to the Gretchens.
Riot's gonna find an empty to crash, and then just cast Lambert's tiny hut and sleep there for the night.
Clone.
Riot,
Looks a little bit weary. Looks a little bit weary, but
are you making an attempt to do this stealthily without being seen by the Lammasu patrolling the skies?
No. As far as you're aware, it's not illegal to sleep in a place.
Okay, but you were told if you were seen without your chaperone. So you're leaving. Just make double checking that we're all on the same page here. I don't want you to make a decision without all the information. So you're gonna take. Go ahead.
Ciclon is going to have to stick along with her because was the rule.
So you're both gonna squeeze into Laomid's tiny hut.
Yep.
All right, Riot, go ahead and make your fail check for that.
All right. All right, that works.
Okay, so you find, and where in town are you doing this?
Not too far from where the line's then. Any empty alley, any unused bit of the road.
And you find a small bit that you up on the second terrace, because the lowest terrace tends to flood.
Mm-hmm.
What are Mahogany and Serenity doing?
I'm gonna tell Mahogany about we were told we could go there.
Yeah, that seems fun.
Pretty exhausted.
Let's go take the night.
Going to the Gretchens, and what about Kelian? being left alone and unsupervised in this basement. Is Kelian on mute?
Might be. No, doesn't look like he
No?
is.
He's on
Oddly
foot.
Is he getting snaglins?
He's on foot.
He's getting some food. We'll do Mahogany and Serenity first then. You all approach the Gretchen's house. And they live down on the Merchant's Tier in one of these stilted houses. Because the patriarch of the house, Domas Gretchen, makes canes for a living that he sells or gives away to people who can't afford to buy them to pilgrims. Climbing the mount can be very arduous, very stressful, and these canes help people with their own weight. A small bit of comfort that he can offer. And when he sees the two of you approaching, he descends the ladder leading up to his house. Opens his arms wide. He's a middle-aged man, maybe pushing 60. And he welcomes you both by name.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll thank him.
How do you know my name?
And he informs you that the Lammasu have come by, told you that they'd be putting up guests. He says his wife, Rezdova, has already seen to your rooms. There are 3 guest chambers. You can divvy them up amongst yourselves however you like. We've been
So
keeping...
you make canes for people traveling up the mountain?
He nods, and he takes great pride in his work. They're just little walking canes. They wouldn't be useful as a quarterstaff or in combat or anything like that.
So since you move up mountain by meeting hardships in your life and learning things, are you making it harder for people to travel up the mountain?
He says, I do what I can to make it a little easier.
Right. Doesn't that mean that they're going to be stuck in one place?
I see what he's going with this.
Domas assumes you're making some sort of jape. Like, he doesn't...
I was just curious.
He doesn't really get it, and he laughs at the joke. But you kind of feel like he doesn't get the joke, because there really isn't a joke, but he doesn't know that. But he says,
Mahogany will laugh with him, assuming that there's some joke he's not getting.
and he invites you both upstairs and tells you that they've been keeping dinner warm for you.
All right, thank you.
He brings you both upstairs. He introduces you to his 2 children. Well, first of all, Rezdova, your first thought is she's way too young for this guy. She's maybe 30. And they introduce you to their 2 children. Yulana, who is 13 or 14, and then very young son, who they call Little Duck. A darling boy of 3 with blonde curls, and they are both delighted to see you. They all want to hear about your adventures in the Tower of Fire. They all want to hear about the kind of crazy elemental people you are.
Mahogany will tell him all sorts of stories of crazy elemental people. Some of them he heard from and is assured that they're true.
And you're both served a very thick broth for dinner, along with freshly baked bread. And good cool water to wash it down with.
Gee, that all sounds delicious. Too we're not there.
Too bad you're hunched down in a Laoman's hut eating hardtack.
I want to be very clear that it's Leoman's tiny hut, not
Yeah.
Leoman's spacious and comfortable hut.
Right.
Yeah, we're the only 2 people in the universe that could, be forced to live like beggars.
So
In
did
the
they
lawful
get
good,
sod
happy
when they
town.
cast that, or what's that made out of?
Did they get what?
Sod. It uses a little ground is building material. Usually it's sod, but
Oh,
Just
I think it's forces.
yeah, 10-foot radius immobile dome of force brings
Oh,
you to a
okay.
distance around and above you.
But she can pick the
I'm thinking
color.
of secure shelter. That's my fault.
during the course of the evening, Domas is very inquisitive about your adventures in general, where your travels have brought you in life. Yulana, the girl, asks a lot of questions specifically about Mount Celestia, your adventures on the mountain. How high have you traveled? Who have you met? Which temples have you visited and prayed at?
We just got here. We haven't actually. We briefly visited the Temple of Yolanda because of my preferences towards gods. We haven't made any progress yet.
And when you say
I
that you
prayed in
haven't,
barracks.
you prayed at the barracks.
Isn't that what we were at the first time? It was like a fortress type thing. Tower. There was fire around it.
I don't
That's a
think it was a
barracks,
temple.
right? Right, Serenity?
And when you tell Yulana that you haven't actually progressed up the mountain yet, she seems sad and then stops asking questions about your journeys. We'll come back to you guys in just a second. Kelian,
Yes, sir.
alone and unsupervised in the basement, with the unfathomably expensive vintage of wine. And this magical heat source that's required to make it. What do you do?
If he thought that he could make like a really quick and clean getaway, he would absolutely do all of this. Except all he knows is that his friends want to go to the temple of Bahamut, besiege Bahamut for something, some sort of ridiculous thing. Other things we still need to do here. For whatever reason, he has no idea what's going on, but they want to do it, so we're going to do it.
Okay.
So
Make a quick Arcana check. DC 15.
I think in Crapana. Yeah, I am. All right. Yeah, that's 8.
An 8? Okay. I mean, you haven't seen this heat source in the room because right now it's invisible. But as far as making a clean getaway, I mean, it's got to be small enough to fit up and down those stairs if you just had a safe way to hold it.
Yeah, but Alien is suspect number 1. Like, he can't do it. He just can't do it. At least not now.
Okay.
Maybe if we come back.
So what do you do at that point with the rest of your quote unquote night as you're starting to get tired?
He will get a room. Now you said it's we're not going to stay at the Lucky Lion, right?
No, it's not an inn. They don't have any rooms to rent. But you were all directed to the Gretchens. The Lammasu have arranged to stay there.
Yeah, and I'll head there.
Okay. You arrive pretty late after they've already eaten dinner. Domas is already smoking his pipe out on his front porch, and he sees you approaching, and he welcomes you up very gleefully. Tells you that dinner's already been eaten, but we can still fix you a plate. Your bed's made up. Your friends are already inside.
Kelian just holds up a hand and heads upstairs.
Okay. The three of you
sulking, miserable.
Do the three of you go to sleep in your guest rooms? All three in the same room or in separate rooms?
Serenity will ask if anybody's heard from Ciclon
And what's her name?
Riot.
What's her name?
I mean, do you think that they got in trouble? He does have Riot with her.
It's El Ciclon. He's probably dead.
Wow.
Jeez.
Wow.
No one's going to die. No, it's not Alessia. I'm sure they're fine.
I don't know. Oh.
Unless he did something particularly egregious, I'm sure it isn't in his head anyway.
Riot could have tricked him into doing it.
Who wrote Lamasu's butt?